All right guys, so in this particular video here today for Exotic Car Hacks, I've decided to break down and have a reaction video here to this gentleman, Brad, who is doing a lot of kind of internet influencing as it pertains to finance, and he has a pretty large company out there. But the argument here is that one of the reasons I decided to do a reaction video here and not just for my Instagram, which you can follow at iCreateMillionaires if you want to see more of these reaction videos, is because specifically for this video, he brings up a point that's very conventional in thinking and literally the opposite of car hacking, and one of the reasons why a lot of much wealthier, intelligent, and individuals who could afford nice cars typically don't buy them because of inaccurate advice like this. And so we're gonna watch this video together and really talk about these concepts because I think it's so important to realize why he's wrong and why it doesn't really work, even though it's good for internet views to say things like this. This is as stupid as the, you know, like 20-10-4 rule or something that you've heard on the internet about what you can or can't afford. The world is more dynamic than that, so it doesn't really work this way. So we're gonna look at this video because I actually like this guy. I don't love his content all the time. I think most of it is basically outdated, but there is some truth to what he says. A lot of his videos are somewhat decent advice. Some are just for views, but let's take a listen here for a moment here for this specific video.
I go buy a Range Rover for $130,000. I drive it for 3 or 4 years, it becomes worth $60,000. That is a depreciating item.
And there's a lot of truth there. What he's saying is very, very true. There are going to be a lot of luxury cars, BMW, Range Rover, you're going to buy. And within this 3 to 4 year range, you're going to have 50% losses, which is why cars are notoriously known to be depreciating assets. And even more so, they're known as liabilities for that reason, right? Because people realize that the larger the price of the car, the more loss there is. So they typically stay away from it, saying this is, you know, like the way you piss away money, or it's just not good. And so let's keep listening here.
I would have taken that $130,000, invested it wisely at 10% interest. I would make $13,000 a year.
So definitely some truth to that. You can easily make 10% interest, so there's nothing here that he's saying that's like just a one-off situation. Very true. The argument here would be that the majority of people buying $130,000 Range Rovers, I would say probably about over 80% are actually either leasing or buying them on finance. So they are not in a position to drop 130 grand to sit in an account to make 13 grand a year. But I just wanted to point that out. So it doesn't mean there's inaccuracy in this, because he is legitimately saying if you do have 130K, then you would make 13K a year, which is fine. There's nothing there. There would also be the argument though that that money at 13K a year would also be taxed almost 40%. So that would leave you ultimately 7K almost to 8K a year. So if you did that over 4 years, his calculation would not necessarily be accurate here. But we're not, you know, that's one of the arguments we make here is that you have to really understand context in order to make videos like that work. But again, in 60 seconds on Instagram, that's why you can't take your education from Instagram videos.
On that money, but the money would still be there and compound. But the $13,000 would afford for the Range Rover. So instead of paying $130,000 for a Range Rover, saying, hey, it's paid for, free and clear, I could invest the $130,000, take the money that I'm making from the investment and get a Range Rover for free.
So this is where you have a lot of misconception. First off, he would need to basically, even if it was long-term, like a long-term investment, and we're talking about, you know, long-term capital gains, let's just argue for a moment here that he invested this money 10 years. The argument here would be that in 10 years he would have 130 grand and it maybe would compound, so in 8 years he would have done that. The argument here that doesn't really hold water, like on any ground whatsoever, is that by not buying the Range Rover, you cannot not have a car. So that's the argument. You have to have a car, and most likely you're gonna buy, let's say even a cheap 3 Series, you're gonna buy let's say a Kia, like you're gonna buy a Kia for 25 grand. So whatever you buy, there's going to be the offset cost of that there, and that depreciation taken the schedule there. And so the argument by buying a Range Rover that you're just spending 130K when you don't have to spend money, well, it's not, the argument is not Range Rover or you're on foot or your bicycle. The argument is Range Rover or you're going to be in a cheaper car. But here's the argument. Are people in a position to have 130 grand really going to drive like 20-year-old Camrys and Kias because they want to save $200 a month? Like let's kind of face it, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So realistically, if we look at real statistics of people buying 3 Series BMWs instead of 130K Range Rovers, okay, well, you're talking about like a difference roughly of 60, 70,000 from one car to the next. So you're not talking about 0 to 130. So that's something really important to understand, and why I hate these types of videos on the internet, because they create a very blank picture that is very far from accurate. So now his argument was that the compounding money of that interest, right, would then allow you to get a Range Rover for free. You can get a Range Rover for free now, you just can't have a base model brand new Range Rover and not lose money. However, using Exotic Car Hacks right now, many of our members are getting 2017, 2018, 2019 SV Dynamic Autobiography Range Rovers, which are $200,000, not 130 grand. And they're driving those cars completely free because they're buying them already at their depreciated value of 100 grand. So they're taking that car that's 3 years old, still under warranty. They're buying it at a fraction of that cost because they're buying the right model with the right options and the right colors, and are able to drive it for a duration of a year or two. And let's say over 3 years, they're losing $20,000. Well, annualized $20,000 divided by 36 months is nothing. It's like losing $500-600 a month to drive a $200,000 truck. And if we're talking about the tax benefits of driving that truck, it's now making you money. So, you know, the argument that life is so, you know, polarized by just this or nothing, this or crap, is where these videos are completely bogus and make no sense. So in this quest, in this normal ideology that's 20 years outdated, that would have held true, that if you bought a Range Rover then and the alternative wasn't available. But today, that alternative is available, and it's called Exotic Car Hacks, by learning the process to not falling victim to this very basic mentality in finance.
Or better yet, pass on the Range Rover. Keep driving the shit car, let the $13,000 stack up, and in 10 years you got $300,000 doing the same shit.
So this is really interesting because he says pass on the shit car, but in many of his own Instagram posts, he doesn't drive a shit car. In many of his own Instagram posts, he flies private. These make sense to him because they're tax deductions for him. But his advice to generic poor people is bypass all of these luxuries and focus on nothingness so that you can make your money work for you. This mentality is what exactly keeps you poor. The lack of networking, the lack of opportunity, the lack of image, the lack of these things that do matter in business, even if you pretend they don't, they do, unfortunately. And in today's age, this matters. And so, you know, while this isn't really about the legitimacy of Bradley and his stuff, it's more about the legitimacy of understanding that conventional finance will never have a place in modern day wealth. So if you're thinking this way, you're probably scheduling yourself to stay poor for a really long time, which is one of the reasons we founded Exotic Car Hacks. So don't forget that. Make sure you join Exotic Car Hacks right now by clicking the link in the description, because I'm gonna rewire your brain to never think like this, so that you don't have to wait to think that you're making 600K a year to even buy a 100K Range Rover. There are ways for you right now to drive your dream car for free, regardless that it's a Lamborghini or a Range Rover. And you don't have to drive a Kia or a BMW, because it will cost you the same to literally drive the Range Rover or the Lamborghini. And that's what you have to learn. That's why you have to click the link, especially because you're gonna rewire your entire brain for the next 30 years. So click the link then, and we've helped over 22,000 people do this, by the way. So this isn't something like some new gimmick you're seeing on the internet. If you haven't followed us, I've been teaching this for 15 plus years all over the internet. So click the link and I'll see you inside our community. My name is Pejman Reacts, and I teach people how to drive exotics for free. Let's look here at how this Huracan can cost as little as $300 a month.